Hey folks, welcome to another one of our MySQL interviews. My name is Shane Artherholt. I'm responsible for our global ISV sales business. With me today is Mike Frank. Mike's responsible for our product management within our MySQL business, focused around security. So Mike, welcome to our interview series.
Good to see you, Shane.
So we want to spend a few minutes today just learning more about all the cool things that we're doing with respect to security around the MySQL database. Before we jump in, would you mind just giving just a quick background of yourself and what you do with us?
Sure. So I work I'm MySQL product management director at Oracle. And overall, I've been doing security-based startups and products over the last 20 years. So this is not a new topic for me or not a new area. And I have been focusing a lot lately on the MySQL security products over especially the last 5 years. So it's an area I enjoy and certainly an area I get a lot of questions on lately from our customers, and I love talking about it.
Cool, great. Yeah, so you mentioned security and its increasing relevance in our discussions with customers. On the ISV side, I kind of look at it, it's becoming maybe the most important topic that we are asked by ISVs is what are our capabilities? How do we help address security at the MySQL level? So from your perspective, from an ISV's view and what you see, what are some of the things that an ISV that's developing on MySQL, what should they be thinking about in terms of security?
Right. So, as an ISV, you're responsible for your customers' data, and whether that's on site at the customer or you're running in SaaS mode, you've got to make sure that data is protected and that it isn't seen by outsiders. Most likely, it's very valuable information if they bought your product and are using it. And so it's important to really make sure that data is protected from the various attack vectors and things like that, where the hackers will try to just to steal it. And so along that line, there's various things that you have to make sure you have to protect. You have to make sure that the folks getting into the database are who they say they are, and so this is what's called authentication. So you have to make sure that you set up accounts with the proper access controls inside of MySQL to be able to know that this user is from this company and they have access to this data, and that's all set up properly. You have to show that your own employees who have access to the database aren't looking at your customers' data, or if they do, you can show what they're doing and what they're up to, so that the customer knows that they can trust but verify on your management of their information. And then there's a number of other things that you have to sort of make sure to do to protect the data.
Yeah, okay. So, it's a lot of stuff to think about. Another one of the things that we hear quite a bit about and more about is just the growing breadth of global requirements that people have to meet, GPDR or PCI in the credit card space, or HIPAA in healthcare. What type of things do ISVs need to be concerned about now with all these new and growing regulations?
Right. So there's a number of things. Those regulations in general require you to do certain things explicitly. Some more explicitly than others, but for example, PCI requires you to have a key management solution to manage keys that are used to encrypt data. And so MySQL has integration with various key vaults from the most major vendors and the most supported sort of key management protocols. So you can put that in place, and that comes in where you have to encrypt your data at rest and make sure that folks on the operating system, for example, can't get to that data. You know, there's more than one way to get to MySQL data. One is to control the access to that data through MySQL accounts and set up access controls and all that sort of thing. But then you also don't necessarily have control of what the operating system, the powerful operating system users do if the data is not encrypted. So one of the things you know, if I'm a root user on a Linux system, if I'm an admin on a Windows system, and the MySQL data isn't encrypted, I can look at the data. I can look at the files and look at the data in the files. However, if I've managed the keys off of a key vault and I've got all the data encrypted as it leaves MySQL, you know, then that data, you know, to the operating system user is garbage, right? It's because it's encrypted and they can't decrypt it. And a lot of these regulations require that sort of thing. You know, beyond that, they require other things once a user can get into the database. And so that's sort of limiting what rows, what columns users can get to, but also to limit the format of the data that they expose to the user. So that's what's called sort of data masking deidentification. So you may need to clip the credit card in a manner that the PCI regulation requires, right? And so we've got functions that do that for you automatically, and will meet that regulation. You may have to do some sort of masking because GDPR requires you to do it to phone numbers or social security numbers or other IDs. So we've got a number of tools in MySQL to help you get compliant and really secure your data.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I find out there when we have conversations with customers is they're not aware of that, and there is a very wide scope and breadth of tools that we make available. It's unique to Oracle MySQL. Could you cover off just maybe one or two of those that you think are most unique or most appropriate for an ISV to think about?
Yes, I think the at-rest encryption for an ISV is very important to make sure that you limit access to the database. The other thing that's very important is the authentication of each user that comes into MySQL. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is that, right, you're going to associate certain access controls to each of those users. And especially if they're not users coming from your application should enforce some level of security, of course. But if it's administrators or other users coming in ad hoc into MySQL to run reports or things like that, you're probably also, and that data is sensitive, you're also going to audit that, what they do, right? So we'll have all the events of what data is selected or deleted or changed, or what users are added or removed. And that all goes into an audit log that you can then go in and verify and just say, you know, this is everything that's been going on in the database, and you can see that. And as an ISV, you can show, you know, what you've done and what you haven't done to prove to the customer that maybe you're not accessing their data, or that when you did access it, you know, this is what you did, this is what you changed on their behalf in many cases. Then there are other things you can do, you know, firewalls and things like that. There's a MySQL internal firewall where you can really make sure that your application commands are locked in and will be the only thing that can run in MySQL for certain users. So there's a lot of things that they're very simple in MySQL to implement, but you know that that really will allow you to show who's in the database, what they're doing. Doesn't allow them to get to the data from outside database connections, and at the same time, you know, does things like make sure that you have strong passwords or other things like that.
Makes sense. There's a lot of things to think about, and you know, just everything you just mentioned. We find that unfortunately quite often many of the ISVs haven't thought through, you know, an end-to-end security plan. And you know,
Yeah, that's very true. And I find lately I've been educating some of our ISVs on some of the cryptography things that they can do between their application, MySQL even, where their security requirements stretches from within the database and in their application both. And some of that can be fairly hard to figure out, but as MySQL, we're very happy to work with customers on finding the solution they need, because often it's there, they just don't know what it is.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, I appreciate you providing this overview. One last question. Everyone always wants to know what's next, right? So it's what's here today is great, but can you give a high-level perspective of what you see for the future of MySQL and Oracle and MySQL with security?
Sure. So one of the things I see is that this whole multi-factor authentication thing is, continues to make strides, and there are now more standards for how you do these sorts of things. And so, I foresee us embracing some of these new standards where we can uh, authenticate a user, based on their face or their retina, or a code that comes into their, uh, mobile phone along with a password. Um, and then the other thing I foresee is the ability um, to pull some of the things in from off of the application's plate, as far as massaging the data, masking it transparently, or decrypting data only for certain users and hiding certain columns and things like that. So finer grain access controls that are coupled with cryptography, but in a way that makes it really, really easy to work with.
Great. Okay. Well, Mike, thanks for your time today. I appreciate it. Very informative. We will look to have you on a deeper session down the road. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you, Shane.